And I loved what you said about it being affirming, because for me, it was like all the lights started going on. I was like, oh, that explains a lot. Like that explains why I'm that way and why I'm that way. And oh, that's a good thing, because it's used in this way. And so that's my prayer for my readers and my listeners, is that they would understand that this is going to be a way that God confirms how he's designed you.
Absolutely.
It should be very complementary to how you interact with people, all those things. I think it will be very, very helpful. So I'm glad that you mentioned that point, because that for me, it was like, I was so excited to share the results of things. I was like, oh, yes, that was so good. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's fun discovering those things. It's like a treasure hunt.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people start that journey, they've gone through some point in their life that they don't have a choice, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's the interesting thing, is that God does not give us a rewind button. There is no way to kind of, hit that button and, hey, let's go back a few minutes or a few days or a few years.
Right.
Just didn't give us that option. Mm-hmm. But he did give us a reset button.
Yeah.
Right. We can hit the reset and choose a different path forward. Yeah. And that's the joy of that. And that's the reason I'll share this with you real quick. That's the reason why we created this book called The Yahweh Tree. Right. And the Yahweh Tree is about really discovering, that ability to be that leaf at the top. Right. It's a poetic story. It's intended to be sort of like a gift book. Mm-hmm. But it's also a challenge to say, hey, you are a unique genius. Mm-hmm. You can do this. Now, it's going to take some work. It's not going to be something you're going to figure out overnight, but it's something that you can begin to build on. And if you'll commit yourself to it, and quite frankly, if you'll just have the courage to finish.
Yeah.
And that's what you had, Jenny, is you had the courage to finish the process. You weren't afraid of where you would end up. Mm-hmm. Some people I've seen who didn't finish because honestly, they were afraid they were actually going to have to change. And that was too much for them. Mm-hmm. They felt maybe too vulnerable, and they didn't want to get the feedback from their family and friends. And so, but I mean, for me, that was such a life-changing experience to hear what other people thought my natural gifting was, and then to begin to find ways to use that. Wow. I mean, it really was a life-changing experience.
That's awesome. So tell us what Yahweh stands for. I think you mentioned it earlier. But people are going to be like, what's Yahweh?
Yeah, the Yahweh tree. So Yahweh is an acronym, but I literally woke up in the middle of the night. I kid you not. And it hit me. And I got up and wrote the poem of the poetic story of that book, the Yahweh tree, which, it's on Amazon. But the Yahweh is, yeah, but what if? Mm. And it was that challenge to say, you see people who go through different phases of life. Maybe they've gone through a death of a loved one, or they've come back from military service, or they've been fired from a job, or they've gone through a divorce, or sometimes they just graduated from college and I don't even know what I want to do. Right. And so now what? Right. So the Yahweh concept is, yeah, I get it. I know, I understand where you are, but what if, right? What if you could start learning more about yourself, understanding your unique genius, mm-hmm. your talents, the combination, and could then find a path forward. Maybe that's working in a job that exists, or maybe it's creating something new, and then committing yourself to that. That's the key thing, and that's where a lot of people struggle, is they're unwilling to, as they say, burn their ships. Right. They want to have an escape out. Yeah. It's very difficult to really pursue your genius when you've always got that escape hatch. You have to commit yourself to it, and wherever that takes you is, in biblical terms, you got to step out of the boat.
Yeah.
You got to step out of the boat in faith. Yep. If God's in it, then pray and fast about it, and know that you're committed to it. What I have seen from people all around the world is that it's amazing how God will bless that faithfulness.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, and this wasn't one of my original questions, but what are the 6 kind of steps that the Yahweh journal, I know you've just created a journal.
Yep.
I'm super excited about, because we didn't have a journal back 6.5 years ago when we did it. But, and I was looking through it, and it's the exact process that you walked us through back then.
Yeah.
So what are kind of the 6 essential kind of
Yep.
steps that someone can take? And then where do you recommend they absolutely start? Because there's a lot of people that are like, I want to know how to do this, but I
Sure.
don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Well, in the journal is available. Like we're going to put that up on Amazon as well. So we'll try to get that up there soon. But it's, it begins by doing some assessments of yourself. And what we recommend is starting with a strength finder. Strengthfinder.com is a great way to really understand how you're wired. It's interesting that I think there's now 35 or 36 different areas of strength. And, what's fascinating about that is that you have 5, right? 5 areas of strength. I know that mine are competition, ideation, strategic, maximization, and activation, right? And when you know those, and it's funny how many people I ask about that, and they go, "Oh yeah, I did that at some point." Well, what
Yeah,
good is that going to do to you? You got to know these things, right? But when you know that, well, then the good thing is that you do have 5. Now, the interesting part about this, that is that there's about 30 that you don't have. Right. So if you want a path to humility, it is recognizing that there is no well-rounded person. There's only well-rounded teams. Right. So as a leader, your challenge is to understand your strengths and also to have the humility to recognize you don't have even close to all of them.
Right.
You've got at most 1/5, 1/6 of them. So think about how do you then surround yourself with people who have complementary strengths, and how do you build on their strengths together? Right? And that's especially important in education, but in every field, that's a critical part of effective leadership. So Strength Finders is the first one. The second one is really understanding your natural instincts. We recommend an assessment called Kolbe. That's Kolbe. So Kolbe.com. Their A index will tell you what are your natural, what are called cognitive instincts. In other words, how do you naturally take action? And when you know that, I'm a 5-3-8-2, so I know that I'm a more of what's called an innovator pattern. So I need to structure my workday at least half of my time creating new ideas and new solutions, because that's what I'm naturally wired to do. So I spend a little less time on a fact finder and follow through and some of the other pieces as a part of that. And so when you understand how you're naturally wired, it doesn't mean you can't do other things. It just means that when you get outside of your natural wiring, there is the potential for stress and tension. So knowing yourself is creating the best situations for you to be your best, right? And being in the flow, and that's an important part of that. So Strength Finder and natural instincts. The next thing is to really just to identify what are your top habits. What are the things that you do that you think have been most contributory to your success? And understanding what those are is important, because you begin again now a self-reflective process to know how can you build on those natural strengths that you have. And then it continues on. Part of this as well is moving into then seeking out input from your friends and family, right? What is it that they think that you do well? So we encourage sending out, and that's what we include in the journal as a sample email to send out, or a letter to send out to your friends and family, and ask them, what is it that you think is my unique genius? And some of them are really able to articulate that, and as you know, some aren't. I think you struggled trying to get some feedback on that. And it's not complicated. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people get bogged down in, is they think that there's a wrong answer or a right answer, and there's not. It's really a reflective process, and that's why it does take time. Is you have to begin to process, what does that really mean, and taking the time maybe to meditate and to pray and to listen. What is God telling you through this, and how can you begin to use these new tools to go through a self awareness process and being able to be more effective in all parts of your life. So that's, once you collect all that data about yourself, and also writing out, another one is writing out the table of contents of your autobiography. And that's a fascinating process when you begin to sort of reflect back on what were the major chapters in your life, And what did you really learn about yourself from that chapter? We've seen people, Jenny, who really had it was an emotional moment for them when they processed that and they took the time. Sometimes that maybe you need to get away for a few hours or a day or two and really, write that out and spend the time to understand, why did you make some of those decisions and what led to the next phase of your life, and being able to kind of create. You're not writing your autobiography, right?
Right.
It's one page.
Right. Right.
So again, it's a simple process. It doesn't require going and doing a lot of research. There's no wrong answer, but it does require the discipline.
Yeah.